Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. How much is money going to impact what the Lakers do building a roster this offseason? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 17,000 subscribers, all talking Lakers this offseason and getting ready for the draft, getting ready for free agency, Andy, and many of them wondering whether or not money is going to be an impediment to building a winning roster around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The Lakers, of course, a humble mom and pop shop, small business, like many around this country.
That's why they got COVID relief, Brian. Remember?
That's right. Just trying to rub a couple nickels together to get by.
Yeah, they ended up returning that money.
But it's
right call.
We make the joke, and it is occasionally funny, as it was during the say the Warriors series, for example, to refer to the Lakers as just a humble little startup.
Going up against big tech money.
That's right. And, it's fun to make the jokes. And the Buss family is, by any normal standard, incredibly rich. But money is a different thing for the Lakers, where the family wealth is tied up entirely in the team. Compared to other teams around the league. So the question of things like luxury tax payments and all of that is always and has always been an issue with this team. And it's made even more complex this offseason because the rules of the new CBA are such that there are real penalties for passing what is being referred to as the second apron. In terms of payroll, it's about $17 million above the luxury tax. It's a second apron at which, Andy, the penalties for passing it become really significant. It's not just financial. It's, you can't use exceptions and you can't, pick up players off the that have been off the waiver wire. What do you call that at the end of the year? The released guys.
Buyout market.
Thank you. I couldn't come up with a name. Just going to keep fishing for that until somebody saved me, flailing about.
I was willing to let you drown.
No, I appreciate it. The entire first segment is me trying to come up with the words buyout market.
It's the off season. We can get away with it.
We got to get to the weekend somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's always tricky because the Lakers, on the one hand, like these are real strategic considerations and real financial considerations. On the other hand, LeBron, Anthony Davis, what are you going to do?
I mean, just to get even more specific about some of those second apron penalties, as you mentioned, there's a loss of a mid-level exception altogether, whether you're talking about taxpayer, non-taxpayer, just you don't get it. A ban on including cash in trades, which sometimes end up greasing the wheels in these transactions.
Little something. Yeah.
The inability to accept more salary in a trade than the Lakers would send out. The inability, as you mentioned, to hit the buyout market. The inability to aggregate contracts and trades. Limitations on trading the pick. Harsher tax penalties. And just the first apron in and of itself has a certain amount of penalty, like being limited to a taxpayer mid-level exception, not being able to take back more salary and trade out, again, not being able to hit the buyout market. And it's a reason that Jovan Buha from The Athletic does great coverage of the team, friend of the show. He was talking about in a mailbag article that he has up right now that he thinks the Lakers are going to try to avoid the tax entirely because they'd be repeaters if they go into the tax this upcoming season, since they were already in it this year. He noted it's going to be difficult considering they want to keep Austin Reaves, they want to keep Rui Hachimura, to varying degrees of either necessity play or both. They may want to keep D'Angelo Russell. There's decisions about Jared Vanderbilt down the line. It will not be easy for the Lakers to be competitive while avoiding this tax. Mm-hmm. But as you note, and we'll get into, the money realities versus you got LeBron on this team at a certain point, in for a penny, in for a pound. But it is worth noting it's about more than just pay up, Genie, even though in certain respects there is seriously, pay up, Genie to this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the maneuverability questions that come with these punitive things around the second apron particularly are legitimate. And, for a team like the Lakers, which is going to be, not, God willing, not built around just, veteran minimum guys and this and that and whatever, they are still the type of destination where a buyout player would be potentially valuable. There's still a place where, you need that exception to be able to try to add some talent beyond what you already have and beyond what you can find in the trade market or on a veteran's minimum. So like, these are things that are particularly important, a god awful team or whatever, it doesn't really, nobody's coming to you in a buyout market anyway. It doesn't matter. But the Lakers kind of need some of these avenues and some of these tricks. And it's also interesting, like, these are the places where the Austin Reaves question, for example, become relevant in terms of like how they're impacted by a poison pill and how a poison pill contract could chase off the Lakers. I don't think it will, but the kind of pain that it would cause. And what I mean by that, for people who don't may not realize, Austin Reaves, by virtue of his sort of, they call it the Arenas rule or whatever, he can sign
as a second year undrafted free agent being restricted. There's a limit to what there's a limit to what the entire league can offer him, but there's also a limit to what the Lakers can offer him.
Right. The Lakers can offer him 4 and 52, basically. Right. And the league can offer him 4 and about close to 100.
Right. But the structure of it has to be backloaded if it's going to get to 100, because there is a max, I believe it's about $12 million that Reaves can make in his first season, regardless of what team he's on.
And so, Austin Reaves, if he gets paid $50 million, $60 million, $70 million, $80 million next year, this offseason in terms of the total contract, is only going to count for, like you said, about $12 million on the cap next year. But if suddenly in 2 years he balloons up to, over those last, to 25 a year or something like that, for a team like the Lakers, who are trying to project ahead, trying to juggle all these cap machinations and all this stuff, this is the calculus that a team would be making to say, maybe, just maybe, if we make this difficult enough for them, the Lakers would look ahead and say, this is going to be problematic. I would be shocked if that was the case, but it's an example of how these rules can impact not just, how does Rui Hachimura, can they give Rui Hachimura $21 million if they need to, as opposed to the 17 that they might want to do it? What if D'Lo costs 22 instead of 20? What if, and down the line? The Lakers have to think of these things in a really holistic way. And it'll be very interesting. It'll be really fascinating to see what teams like the Clippers and the Warriors do, who have blown past that second threshold by tens of millions of dollars each and have hard choices to make there. But for the Lakers,
they're the mythical third apron.
Yeah. And it's not even a question of, can these guys afford to pay him? The answer is yes. There is no tax that, the Warriors crew or Steve Ballmer can't pay, but it's a question of whether or not it starts to really ring out your competitiveness. But I want to focus though on that LeBron question. What is the balance, Andy, between maximizing what you can do with LeBron and keeping the most amount of flexibility that you have? If you have to choose between adding a player and losing flexibility, or keeping the flexibility, but perhaps having a little less depth? Which direction do you go? That's next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you need to make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's really safe, it's secure, really, really easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the money line to the top point scores, or you can get a little saucy with an exclusive bet like the 2x3, 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. That will be a really interesting bet in the finals with a team like Denver that is more than capable of paying that off. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Again, safe and secure. You get paid instantly. There is no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Quick little bit of NBA housekeeping here. Every once in a while, you still see, Andy, people wondering, like, would the Lakers move on from Darvin Ham? Like, did this Western Conference Finals run save him? Like, does he have tons of job security next year even? Like, what if they get off to another bad start? Monty Williams signed a contract today, on Wednesday, I should say, with the Detroit Pistons. So 6 years, $72 million is that agreement. I don't know if he signed it yet, but that's the reported agreement. 6 years, Andy, $72 million. I think it can go up even to 100. It can even go up to like 100. I believe that there's the potential there with bonuses and incentives and all that kind of stuff. Every coach in the league, basically their job security might have gone up considerably, particularly for a team like the Lakers, where it's considered a premium job, where you're looking at premium coaches. Darvin Ham wasn't in any real danger. The Western Conference Finals run solidified him for sure. The Lakers, I think, are very pleased with where they ended up. He's going to get a couple more years, but if there was any question, it's gone now, because the Lakers, with this reset market, after they paid Frank Vogel last year in addition to Darvin Ham, they're not letting Darvin Ham go to hire somebody, at the newly set Monty Williams 6 years, $72 million rate.
I don't remember a coach getting a 6-year deal
ever. Like, I can't.
I mean, that reminds me of like when Allen Houston used to get 13-year deals and stuff like that. Like, right. Honestly, I don't remember the last time.
Somebody can look it up and send it to us at Cam Brothers. The last time something like this happened. But the part of the reason I bring this up, Andy, is in this conversation that we're having about these thresholds for tax-paying teams, for teams with high payrolls, with stars and whatever. I do wonder if this kind of thing, where Tom Gore is the owner of Detroit, is spending. He's a very wealthy man. He's spending money in places that are uncapped. Coaches are uncapped. Training facilities are uncapped. The medical staffs and all these other things. If we're going to see a bit of an arms race in those aspects of the NBA, where teams are still free to spend any amount of money that they want, because payrolls are going to be, in theory, a little bit more limited. It got my attention in that way. Like when Steve Kerr goes back on the market, what's that contract going to look like? Championship caliber coaches. These CBAs always have sort of ripple effects in different ways, and I'm wondering if this kind of thing could become more common, where higher profile coaches or sought after coaches get huge deals from very wealthy people. Just got me thinking.
My guess is it won't, just because I think for the most part, teams that were willing to pay the highest premium for the highest talent were always willing to do it anyway. And the teams that aren't going to do it regardless of what the CBA is, because the old CBA was being treated by them as too punitive to spend. So in a new CBA that is actually more punitive, I don't see it changing.
But anyway, so get back to this LeBron question. The Lakers really are in a tricky spot. We've talked about it a bunch since the end of the season, and everydayers, I think this is going to be a theme that we get into throughout the offseason. I am of the opinion, I think you agree, that the Lakers, if you're going to be a team that is built around LeBron, first, you're going to need to try to go for it as much as you can. You use the phrase "in for a penny, in for a pound." I think there's a lot of truth to that. But the second thing about it is you need regular season depth to maximize LeBron's ability to get you through a playoff, and Anthony Davis too. You need to support them through the regular season as much as possible. And that means having 9, 10, 11, 12 credible, playable NBA players on your rosters, as much as you can. And so it puts a pressure on the Lakers really to bring back, if not the guys that they already have, to find real replacements for them who in theory would also cost money. It's a difficult situation to penny pinch.
The truth is, as great as LeBron, his career has been and as high of a level as he still can often play at, it is not practical to have a team that is built around a 39-year-old in his 21st NBA season with enough playoff mileage that is the equivalent of another 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. So the reality is you have to be kind of impractical because there is no practical way of doing it. If you're looking to be practical, quite frankly, you shouldn't be doing this in the first place, because LeBron at this stage of his career, tied to Anthony Davis with all of his injury issues, the highs can be extremely high, as we've seen. When they are cooking, they are as good as just about any duo in the league. But there's a lot of risk that comes with it, and you just have to accept that. But if you're going to be doing this for any reason other than just putting asses in seats, there's a spending that just comes with it in order to make it worthwhile in the first place. You do have to make sure that you are spending what is ultimately going to be a lot of money as smart as possible. Mm-hmm. But you can't have an aversion to spending a lot of money. And, if your aversion to the first apron, the second apron is purely about strategic flexibility when it comes to building your roster, then okay, you got to make sure that you are splitting these hairs as well as possible and really making sure that that every dollar counts the way it should. But if you're concerned about it just because of the tax, it's unacceptable. I mean, at that point,
you don't want to, just because you don't want to pay the money.
Well, you're not serious about this. Again, unless you are having LeBron there primarily because you want to make sure that you are selling tickets. And I guess in the case of the Lakers, because you often don't know what to do with yourselves unless you have a superstar to market and to, help anchor your franchise's identity. You have to be all in. Otherwise, there really is no point. As far as the best way to go about doing it, I'm inclined to think that it's probably retaining their name guys. Rui, it's Reaves, it's probably D'Angelo Russell, because you're not going to have the means for replacing him if you let him walk. You can't. You won't get that space back. And I think the sign and trade market for D'Angelo Russell is going to be as soft as the free agent market for D'Angelo Russell. Not impossible, but I think it will be soft. And I think ultimately there's no team in the league that needs D'Angelo Russell more than the Lakers. And D'Angelo needs the Lakers as much as they need him. But yeah, I think that's ultimately the best way to go about doing this.
It's the question, and we can keep talking about this after the break. It's that question of, if you start to approach it and your choice is a player or flexibility, a player or all the stuff that you can do, by staying under that second apron, that I think is where the Lakers are going to face some tricky decisions. Obviously, it depends on the player, but I can picture scenarios in which, bringing back Lonnie Walker on a, whatever deal the Lakers can offer him, the $7.5 million or whatever the raise they're able to give him, which would be pretty decent, versus a veteran's minimum guy. where like you might have to let Lonnie walk, or a player of reasonable value, in order to keep that flexibility, versus losing the flexibility but adding, making sure you have a potentially valuable player on your roster. The Lakers are going to be close enough there where I think those kinds of difficult strategic basketball decisions are going to be on the table, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Lakers do it, and it's going to be interesting to see how all the teams that are in this ballpark kind of approach it, because everyone is new to these rules, and there is no blueprint yet for the right way to do it. It'll probably be pretty apparent in a couple of years the best way to go about it, but it's not clear yet.
I mean, you're going to start asking yourself questions. Is Lonnie Walker better than anybody you would get on a taxpayer mid-level? Because if Lonnie's salary ultimately pushes you to a place where you don't have a mid-level at all, but Lonnie's better than anybody you would get with that mid-level anyway, then it makes sense just to have Lonnie.
Sure.
If, say, Dennis Schroeder is better than anybody you'd get on a mid-level and you can keep your mid-level exception, then it would make sense to say, let Lonnie go, sign Dennis Schroeder for most, if not all, of your taxpayer mid-level, and you become a team that's somewhere either below the 169 threshold or somewhere in between that.
179, I think is the number they're looking at for the second.
So,
but it's also the other ones too. There's all those little things that go along with it. As the situations get closer to me, like where the Lakers really are, making these choices, and it'll depend. It's where 18 million versus 20 million for Rui becomes an issue. It's where 17 versus 19 for D'Angelo, whatever it might be. All these little numbers that otherwise wouldn't make a huge difference could. You mentioned D'Angelo and Dennis Schroeder. Interesting comment that was left on the Locked On Lakers YouTube page regarding their potential ability to return and what they might get paid. And so let's get to that next. So this comment from Professional English, Andy: if D'Lo walks, turning down what the Lakers offer him, he'll quickly see how Dennis felt, meaning Schroeder, after turning down his offer a couple years ago, the bag, as he so notoriously fumbled. I thought that was, I get what Professional English is getting at. I do think contextually, though, the Lakers and D'Angelo are in a different spot. Like, it's harder for the Lakers to move on quickly from Russell in terms of just being able to like replace him with a different player to do the same thing, because of all the stuff we're talking about before. Like, they don't have the cap space to go out and get him. They don't really want to use a mid-level, their only real exception here, to replace a player that they already have. Like, I feel like there's a little bit more go see what you can find, come back to us, let's have a negotiation. Whereas with Dennis, once he said no thank you, the Lakers were able to more quickly move away from that than this. So I thought that was an interesting thing too. But it also gets into the question of how easy is it going to be, Andy, do you think, to bring back Schroeder if they want to? Because his market is going to be interesting, and the Lakers are limited in what they can offer him.
I think it depends a lot on what type of exception the Lakers have, assuming they have one at all, depending on where their payroll lands.
So Jovan talked about it in the article. I think the assumption across the league is that the Lakers will use the taxpayer mid-level.
Sure, but I'm just saying
somewhere in that 6 million neighborhood or whatever.
Right. I know, but I'm just saying it depends obviously on where it ends up landing. I would be surprised if Schroeder commanded more than mid-level money. That was the money that he made when he was signed by the Celtics after fumbling the bag. Even though Dennis had a pretty good season, I'd be surprised if he could command much more than that. And he seems like he wants to be here. Seems like he really likes it here. He loves Darvin Ham, and the feeling is quite mutual. So I think assuming the Lakers have a mid-level exception at all, I think their chances of keeping Dennis are reasonable.
But they don't have, if they can offer him, what is it? Is it twice or 3 times his current salary? I thought it was 3x over what they paid him last year. And if that's the case, they may not even need to use the exception.
I don't think it's 3x.
Is
Lonnie Walker, the most they can offer him is, I believe it's 7.7 million, because that's I think it's like a 1.25% raise, something like that. I think it's along those lines for anybody coming off a 1-year deal. So I think without using the exception, the most they can offer Schroeder is about three-ish million. I could be wrong about this, but I believe that's the case.
Yeah, it's a tricky, it just for the Lakers to bring back everyone starts to get into these little tricky places. Like, and obviously nobody, I think, expects the Lakers are going to have exactly the same roster as they did after the trade deadline last year. But, it's such a lousy free agent year that, there are going to be it happens every year, but in particularly in a bad year, a couple guys, teams are going to get desperate. Some team somewhere is going to get desperate to spend some money on someone, and there'll be some eye-popping deals. But I kind of feel like there are going to be a lot of players that are still standing around hoping to get something better than, a taxpayer mid or something like that. And hopefully that benefits the Lakers.
Well, I saw Nate Jones, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he is a phenomenal NBA follow. He works, I want to say, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, I want to say he works with a Goodwin agency. I know he works with Damian Lillard, and he talked about how people are focusing on, with this new CBA and how it's going to affect the superstars of the league and super teams and all that stuff. What he said it's likely to do, and I think it's a sharp observation, and he's likely correct, what it's really going to do is hurt the NBA middle class, if not wipe it away. Which, why should the NBA middle class be any different than America's middle class?
Well,
I
mean, and this, by the way, I was
about
to say, this has been a trend in the NBA for a while.
That middle class is where you may start seeing people get squeezed, and that becomes particularly important with the Lakers, because as much as they're going to be thinking about the discrepancy between $17 million and $20 million for Rui Hachimura, so are the other 29 teams around the league. Like, this affects them as well. Same thing with like a $15 million offer versus $17 million for D'Angelo Russell, or even some backloaded deal for Austin Reaves, which, again, I don't think there's a scenario where the Lakers do not match for Austin, just period. I think they're going to keep him and worry about the rest later. But it is important to remember that all of these other teams are going to have, even ones with cap space, they're going to have the same apprehensions about their own future and, the difference between $2 or $3 million and their own payroll implications as the Lakers.
Right. That's kind of my point, is I think, if it depresses the market, a depressed market helps the Lakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
A really good year for the market to be depressed, and, for D'Angelo Russell to be looking around and seeing 13 million here, 14 million there, 15 million there, where the Lakers can say, all right, how about this? Let's settle on, 2 years at 17.5, and we'll put a partially guaranteed third year in there, and you get a little bit more. We get to keep the player we need, who's better than any. There are years where you go into it and feel like spending is going to be off the hook. This does not feel like one of them, both because of the new rules and because of the quality of the free agent market, lack thereof, really. A lot of teams could just sort of choose to keep their proverbial powder dry. And it is good timing for the Lakers to have something like this, because it will open up options for trades. It will open up options to try to hold on to players that they want. Something to look forward to, Andy. I was asked an interesting question today on Wednesday, doing the Roger Lodge show in LA, of course, longtime host in Orange County, about the players on the Lakers with the greatest upside. So that is something that we're going to get into on Friday, because the answer to that question really gets into how the Lakers are constructing this roster, and again, what it means to build something around LeBron and AD.
Also, too, real quick, as far as building around LeBron and AD, some details I want to get into on Friday involving Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba as trade assets.
Oh yeah,
they can be, but the way is very particular, which in turn may, I think, very directly impact who the Lakers could take back in a trade for them. So we'll get into that on Friday as well.
Plenty to look forward to. All of this stuff becomes super relevant as the Lakers in the league approach the NBA draft. We'll also talk a little bit about the NBA Finals, which kick off and could give the Lakers a little bit of a barometer as to where they stand vis-a-vis the rest of the league. So all that coming up Friday and into next week. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.